Welcome back to part 3 of this 100-day challenge. Of course, each episode is going to be 10 episodes at a time, with the exception of this episode, which will be 9 episodes. Only for the fact that day 29 ends, I would say, pretty strong comparatively, while day 30 is a bit of a slump, so I didn't want you to end on that slump. But anyway, we left off with me needing a dung beetle, because dung beetle is definitely going to help grow my farm, with it auto-collecting all the dung that the dinosaurs produce, and turning it into fertilizer. Well, I did not find a dung beetle, but I also need Dimetrodons, and for some reason, the Griffin cannot pick up the Dimetrodons. So I'm out here taming an Argentavis, because Argentavis, even though it's a lot slower, it can pick up and carry pretty much all the little creatures that I need, including the dung beetle and Dimetrodon. So there I am taming up an Argentavis, and a bunch of other Argentavis come and try to attack it, which was kind of nasty, but it survived, luckily. Anyway, I took the entire time flying to the desert, which was forever, so you're lucky I cut all that out. I still have to stop and let it, get its energy back every so often, which takes up most of the time, if not for the flying speed. Luckily, because this is a solo server, I was able to edit the stats in order to level up the flying speed, so that will come eventually as the Argentavis levels up. Eventually, I find my dung beetle. I couldn't find them in the Sightless Cave, which I know they spawn there. I've seen them spawn there, but I had to go all the way to the desert to eventually find one. I take it all the way to the coastline where I know it will be safe away from the death worms that could possibly spawn. I feed it some poop, and I tame it up. Now to just carry it all the way back to my base. This pretty much eats up the rest of day 21, as it takes, again, forever to keep flying back to my base, as well as stopping to let the Argentavis rest, letting down the dung beetle, flying back up, picking it back up. Yeah, it was really tedious. Though, when I do get it home, I set it down and I get it to work, and already it starts picking up all of the poop. It's mostly the Phiomia, but, with the effectiveness of how the dung beetle works, I don't even think I need the Phiomia anymore, because after this point, I will have fertilizer for days, to the point that even after I expand my farm, I will have way too much fertilizer to even know what to do with. So, now we're going to go into day 22, where I'm going to go and look for the Dimetrodons, but first I stop at this little waterfall over here to pick up some iron. The resource respawn rate is still at default settings, so that cave under the waterfall near my base, that one is pretty much still empty and doesn't have any iron, even though it's been about a week or two in-game. So I'm having to look for other areas to find metal and iron in order to farm it up and start smelting it. Luckily, the Argentavis takes a lot of weight off, so it's the perfect mount to take for these kind of trips. Just outside my base, I start gathering up a ton more wood and fiber using John II, because we are going to be building on the farm as well as the rest of the base. This is what I do for most of day 22, as I expand the farm and even expand the dodo pen a little bit. Though the big upgrade for my crops will have to come later. Right now it's just 4 plots, one of each type of crop. Eventually I want to make it a 4x4 so that there's 4 plots of each type of crop, but that will be in the next day or two. I still want to get that Dimetrodon, and there's still daylight, so I go and I hop back onto my Argentavis and I fly towards the swamp. It's kind of funny, every other playthrough of Ark Survival Evolved or even Ascended, I almost never find Dimetrodon. They're just like rare as fuck, but this time around, I do manage to find one. Not only did I find one earlier when I had the Griffin, but this time around I find not only one, but 1 and 2 of its babies nearby. So this will be an easy tame. Now I don't tame all 3, I tame the parent and then I tame one of the babies, but as it took forever to bring the dung beetle back home, this is going to be much longer because now I have to transport 2 of them. I basically go back and forth between different stopping points where I would think it's safe to drop one off, and fly back, go grab the other one, bring it over there, and I would keep repeating this process, which would continue on until the late night of day 22. Now, a reminder of why I'm getting the Dimetrodon is because they are basically an AC. If you are within their range, they will neutralize the temperature in the area. It's also good for hatching eggs, including dragon eggs. Now, at this point in time, I do not know if this will work for dragon eggs. Because I like to play primitive, I don't usually use ACs, and because I almost never find Dimetrodons, I almost always have to put like 20 fireplaces in order to hatch dragon eggs whenever I do play on Scorched Earth or even the old Ragnarok on Evolved. So using a Dimetrodon, I don't know if 2 is gonna cut it, but it'll be a fun experiment to see if it actually works. So I settle down the Argentavis for the night, I check on my nighttime dinosaurs who are wide awake in the moonlight, and we progress into day 23. On the docket for today, I basically want to build a tavern, which will have all of my cooking stations, all of the preserving bins. I want to build a beer barrel and stuff like that. So I got my tavern I want to build off to the side right over there. And I want to also tame a queen bee because eventually I want to make veggie cakes. And to make veggie cakes, I need honey. I also need tree sap, but I'll make a tree sap farm area later. For now, I need to make a ghillie suit as well as insect repellent in order to tame the bee. Now, luckily for me, I found a ghillie suit piece when I was doing the loot crate run earlier in my playthrough, so that's one piece less that I don't have to make. But in order to make the rest of it, I'm going to need organic polymer, so that's going to be something else to add for today. For now, I'm going to start working on my tavern, and it's going to have similar design to my house where it kind of goes down into that step, but once I ran out of resources, I thought that was a good time to take a break and head up to the mountain where there's a little bit of a frozen pond that you could find the penguins in. The penguins are going to be pretty much the easiest source of organic polymer for me right now. Of course, I'm going to have to compete with this pack of raptors also trying to kill the penguins. I use my Mastercraft sword and I rush up to the raptors and start taking them out one by one. Luckily, because I have such a strong sword, it makes quick work of the raptors. And not just the pack, but I kill the women and the children too. Yeah, I kill the baby raptors, sue me. Anyway, they took out pretty much all the penguins that were here, so all that's left was this one little baby that was swimming around. Luckily, he gives me just enough to make the rest of the piece that I need. So I head on home and I make my ghillie suit and I get ready to go tame a queen bee. Now remember earlier I went to a place that I like to call the Grizzle Woods. Now again, I don't remember what the actual place names are for this map. I have my own little roleplay names for them. Anyway, the Grizzle Woods is this area close to the Blue Obelisk on the side of the Snow Mountain, and it has a ton of dire bear spawns. Like, that's pretty much all that's there, which is why I call it the Grizzle Woods. But it also has honeybees, and right there you see the queen bee. Now, the first time I attempted to run up and tame it, I had forgotten to put on the insect repellent, so I kill the bees that she sends at me real quick. I wait for her to de-aggro, I take my insect repellent, and I try one more time. Luckily, if you have all of that settled, she should not aggro and you can run up and feed her a rare flower. 1 or 2 should be enough to tame her. Once you tame her, you can pick her up and then you can place her as a honey hive. I head on home and I place the honey hive in the farm of my base. I figured that would be the most appropriate spot to place her. The rest of the rare flowers that I have in my inventory, I put into the hive so she has something to eat, and now it's basically just a waiting game for her to create honey. But I still need tree sap as well as some other stuff, such as the vegetables, but that will be for another day, because as I conclude this day and I head into day 24, today is going to be the day that I try to get myself a wyvern egg. I'm going to try to go for the ice wyvern, because that is not only the closest one to find, but as of this new version of the Ascended Ragnarok, it's pretty much the easiest one to get because all of the other dragons are still in a crevice, and if you pick up an egg, yeah, you pretty much aggro all of them. It's still kind of the same thing with the ice wyvern, but there is only 2 of them, and they're not as rare as they used to be. But before I do that, as you see there, I'm punching a bunch of dodos. I'm trying to expand out my little dodo coop. The few that I managed to tame, I throw in there, and the rest of them, they just kind of get one shot because all of my skill points went into melee, which is why I'm one-shotting them so easy. Also, did you know, I did not find this out until, like, right now, that these pelican dudes, if you're walking with a dodo out in the middle of the beach, these pelican dudes not only swipe down and steal your shit, but they can swipe down, pick up your tamed dodo, and eat it in front of you in mid-air. I had that happen to me, and I am so sorry I did not catch that on video. I, like, stopped stopped filming just to kind of like grind up and get my dodos, thinking, oh, this is gonna be nothing, you don't need to see this stuff, and then this happens. I was like, what the hell? Anyway, I get what remaining dodos I was able to tame into the pen, and I was so glad to be over with that. But now finally it's for the ice wyverns. So what I was saying before is that the ice wyverns, they used to be like super rare spawns, and same thing with their eggs. Now they seem to always spawn in the same spot. Even if you kill the dragons, and this is the same thing for the swamp castle with those venom dragons, if you kill them, they just respawn in the same spot like 5 minutes later. I've noticed the same thing with these ice wyverns. If you kill them, they spawn right back where they were. Same thing with the eggs. You loot it and it will spawn right back, which is why these are pretty much the easiest to grab. They are no longer rare. You just have to, you know, outrun the wyverns. But if you have a griffin, this makes short work of it. You just grab the egg, hop on the wyvern, dive, and that's it. You see the dragons trying to chase me there, but they're so slow they cannot keep up with the wyvern. So easy egg, done deal. But the wyvern will still need something to eat. So with the male and the female bison, I go ahead and I get them to start breeding. Also, my experiment worked. The Dimetrodon are perfect for hatching the dragon egg. I was actually surprised that this was a thing. And then I went to go check on my dung beetle, looking at, oh my god, look at all of that shit. And all that fertilizer. Yeah, like I said, unlimited fertilizer for days. I never have to worry about it ever again. Anyway, the bison baby soon came out. I tamed it up, and then I took the milk from the mom. Now, I don't know if this is like a one-time milking situation, or if it's supposed to be on a timer. I don't know, but I only ever get one milk from the bison, you know, since that moment. Luckily, I only needed one to keep the dragon alive long enough for it to grow up, but eventually it did hatch. I put the wyvern milk, and luckily it doesn't eat it right away. It eats it much later on. Now, during this moment when it hatched, there was one of those RAGNAROK storms going off with the lightning and everything. So because of that, I named my dragon Stormborn. It is a little female as well, which is funny because the very first ice wyvern I ever got on RAGNAROK back on Evolved was also a little female ice wyvern, though I don't really remember what I named her. Anyway, the new bison I named Champ. Why? I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to mind. Anyway, we go now into day 25. This is where I'm going to start making my tree sap farm. I also need to wait until the dragon grows up a little bit, so while she does that, I'm also going to go down into the depths of the ocean in order to look for some Toothis or whatever they're called, because I'm going to need their tentacles in order to summon the boss later on. The green obelisk I use as a landmark in order to remember where I placed this tree sap. Now, you have to place it a little bit high up onto the tree. You can't put it close to the ground, which means I'm going to have to hop off the griffin here, loot up some wood, fiber, and thatch, and make myself a ladder as well as a platform so I can reach the tree sap collector later on. It doesn't take me that long. I just put up a couple of pillars, a platform, and then a ladder in order to go up into the tree and reach the sap collector. I head back home, I take the saddle off of Tonka, and I put it on Champ in order to move him into the farm area. I don't really need 3 bisons, but I'm a little bit sentimental when it comes to the baby creatures, so I don't want to just give up this guy. Now, the dragon I can't move because she's still growing, so I cannot mount her just yet. Luckily, she won't need a saddle later on. Anyway, this right here is the Tavern. It's not fully complete as of right yet, but it's good enough to actually use it. I even got a beer barrel going so I could try to tame a Dinotherium later on. I put down my preserving bins, and then I start placing some signs because I'm gonna need multiple of these bins now, so I like to keep them organized and labeled so I know what will go in them and what should not go in them. The baby dragon is now all grown up and flying over me. I had her following me because she wanted to follow me as a baby. I tried to get her to move, but she got stuck, and then before she got the imprintation, she grew up and started flying over me. Luckily, I got her down and I was able to mount her and take her out for her very first flight. I land her down on this rock. Now, this rock you cannot build on top of for some reason. I don't know why. I wanted to build a big platform there to be kind of like a dragon platform for just her alone, or if I get another dragon in the future. But now that that is out of the way, it's time to head on down into the depths to look for the Tusoteuthis. Now then, I hyped onto the Dinosuchus, which I still haven't named yet, but I think I'm gonna name it Lagiacrus after the Monster Hunter creature. Now, I mentioned this before, but I noticed that the official Dinosuchus, when you try to swim up or swim down, you can't use the sprinting swim speed, basically, is what I'm gonna call it, because I don't know if there's an official term for it. But if you try to swim straight, you can boost or sprint or whatever it's called. But anyway, I had taken a Lazarus chowder in order to survive not being able to breathe underwater. I brought a second one as well, so when the first one would run out, I could just use it. Now, it doesn't completely make it so I can go without oxygen, it just makes it so it's a lot slower, so I still have to go up from air every so often. Now, I do go down to the bottom, I find a ton of sharks, a ton of those, like, bitey fish, the xylophants, or I don't know what the fuck they're called, and I pretty much go on for a while, not realizing that my Lazarus chowder had worn out, and I ended up drowning underwater. So yeah, that was fun, and this was late at night too, so into the early morning of day 26 is when I started to run back. I hopped on my boat to sail toward where I had died, hoping that I wasn't too far down into the depths that I could actually recover my stuff. I do a quick look around to make sure there are no sharks, though I can't really see anything with how dark the water is. I plunge down. Luckily, there is nothing there to eat me right away. It is a bit deep down, but I do believe I will be able to grab it. So I keep going. I manage to call my Dinosuchus to me, which will be a godsend in order to get back up right away. I grab my stuff quick because I do see a shark homing in on me. Luckily, the Dinosuchus gets right up close to me. I'm able to hop back on her and swim back towards my boat so I can sail back home. So much for bringing Lazarus chowder, even though I had brought multiple of them. Anyway, we head back home. I place around a bunch of torches that have now the angler jelly because I like the cool blue look better than that bright orange that the spark powder was using. So I put all the spark powder into a chest to use later on for other things such as the forge or just a cooking station. The rest of day 26 is pretty much uneventful. I kind of fool around, not really do much, and I go exploring a little bit more because there's a lot of new areas that have been added to Ragnarok that I've not seen yet. First of all, this castle. I don't really remember if there was a castle. I do remember there being ruins. Now, these dragons that I told you about, those always spawn there. Even if you kill them, because I tried killing them already before, they will just respawn. But if you're low enough to the ground, they will not aggro on you. So I fly in low. I actually get into one of the parts of the castle without them seeing me. Even as I'm this close to them, they still don't see me. So if you want to explore this castle, you don't really have to worry about them that much, especially if you stay low to the ground. Anyway, there's an island just off of the coast of the swamp area. Actually, there's multiple islands, but this one in particular has a lighthouse as well as a couple of pre-built houses. These pre-built houses also have world items that are torches that are always alight, which I thought was pretty interesting. I then found this like tomb looking thing. I headed on down and it leads out into a secret exit, like a secret tunnel that you would see in like a castle for a king to escape during a raid. I thought that was also pretty neat. Now we get into these new ruins. These are like some elven ruins or something. This is also known as the Hall of Names because they're the names of a bunch of different content creators as well as people who have helped support the project. And as far as I know, this is the only area in this map that you can find light creatures, like that little Shinehorn right there. I would have loved to tame it, but I have no way of taming it or taking it home with me, so that's gonna have to be later. I fly on over to the tree sap collector to see what the progress is. It had a little bit for me to collect, which is better than nothing, so I grab it and I head on home, with all of my frames dying from the gliding of the Griffin. Like I said, I don't know what it is, but the Griffin gliding, as well as when I go underwater, my frames absolutely take a shit. I guess it's just this new Ragnarok map. Anyway, as you see now, I finally have my 4x4 plots. I had to go out on my Triceratops to harvest up some seeds in order to place into these new plots. I have some new water taps, and everything is ready for them. And of course, the unlimited fertilizer now that I have not only a Phiomia, but the dung bee beetle, so this is going to be great for expanding out and being able to mass produce more cooked items, as well as the veggie cakes that will be needed later on for various reasons, including taming certain creatures as well as healing herbivores during boss battles, which is going to be needed for the Ice Dragon boss battle later on. I am getting much closer to facing this Ice Dragon, though I think I'm going to take my time, because realistically, you can fight it within a few days of starting if you really hardcore it. I'm just kind of taking my time in role-playing, which is why I am padding it out a little bit longer than it needs to be. This is a 100-day challenge after all. I need to fill in those 100 days, but it's probably going to end up being with roleplay building and just fooling around, because this dragon is going to go down by pretty much day 40, I guarantee you that, and that's with taking my time. But I bet you're getting bored of me just talking about building my base and role-playing, which is why this next day, day 27, we're going to be delving into the Ice Caves. So in this point in time, I really only have 2 artifacts left to gather, the one in the Ice Cave Dungeon and the one in the Fire Wyvern Trench. Now the Ice Cave is going to be the hardest one to do. Not only can I not bring in any of my tames, but there is also death worms as well as the Ice Death Worm Queen. I gather up everything that I think I'm gonna need, from various food items to food. I've even got Floof Jr. on me in order to keep me warm, because this place will, even if you have fur armor on. So I head on down, I find a couple of loot crates at the entrance, which is pretty nice. Not much of value, but it's always good to get something rather than nothing. Now, I don't really remember my way through the ice cave, so it does take me a little bit to traverse through, and then it starts to come back to me a little bit, though there's one part where I do still get confused, and of course it's this area here where the ice worms start to emerge. This means I'm getting closer to the Death Worm Queen, because these guys don't really spawn at the start. They spawn about halfway through, all the way until you reach the ice worm. Now, when they start to hit me, they hit hard. I don't know if it's an ability or a spit they have, like the Arthropleura or something, but when they bite you, they pretty much damage and destroy your armor within 1 or 2 hits. So as you see there, my armor continuously is breaking with each attack. Now, luckily, because I put, again, all of my points into melee, I swipe my sword a couple of times and they die instantly. So that means I need to be on the offensive rather than the defensive. Of course, I don't really remember to do that when I get to the Ice Worm Queen, so you'll see that in a second here. So I find the Frozen Climber hanging by a thread there. That gives me the cue that this is where I need to go in order to get to the final room. This next part is going to be the hardest part, because this is going to be the boss battle room. And the Ice Wyvern, yeah, she is huge. I mean, look at that. At first, I was completely terrified. I go on the defensive. That's why I put my shield up. But also, I have absolutely no armor, because the baby ice worms, well, really the smaller ones, not quite babies, they destroyed all of my armor. So I made a run for it. I had, at this point in time, forgotten that you need to kill her in order to get to the room. So I continued to run until my stamina ran out and she got a good bite off me, which one-shot the hell out of me. Yeah, I ended up having to go back home because I tried getting back to my body and it failed, and I lost all of my armor. Basically, all that good gear I had, all the items, all the stuff I had looted, gone. So I went into the chest where all of the spare items that I had gathered from loot crates had been put, and I tried to put on what I could. It wasn't much, not nearly as good as what I had, but it was something. I need to go back down there and get that artifact, come hell or high water. So I try to do what I can to get ready for another attempt, but it might be a while. Again, I put on this armor just for the sake of it, but I'm gonna have to go back around and do a bunch more loot crate farming in order to get even better gear. This is pretty much what's going to take up the rest of day 27, and pretty much all, if not the majority, of day 28 as well. I just need to go around and gather loot crates using the Griffin to zoom around really quick. Now, I also lost Floof Jr. in the dungeon as well, so I stopped by and I picked up another otter, naming him Floof the Third. So yeah, the tradition is going to continue on. And you'll see later on, I also put down a tombstone in remembrance of Floof. That is why I give all of my dinos names, because during these playthroughs, if one of them dies, I want to remember them and pretty much make a little graveyard. So having a name will help me remember who died and who's still alive, basically. So now, day 28, as you see there, I'm pretty much still going around gathering what I can. I have now better things than what I had originally, so I swap out what I want and I put away what I don't want. I have one chest purely for saddles, so whenever I do tame a dinosaur and happen to have an ascended saddle for it, then there you go. Then all the extra gear that I'm not going to use, I put it back into the chest. I go ahead and I skin over the ones that I will be using so I can get back into my roleplay garb. And then I went ahead and I made the tombstones and placed them right outside of my base. Now, I placed them right outside of the bridge for now. Later on, see that rock up to the left there, it's like that ledge, that's where they're going to be moved permanently to, but that doesn't come until later on. At some point, I do take a break from loot crate hunting, and I go back down into the depths to see if I can find any Tusoteuthis. Again, I do not find any, which kind of makes me sad a little bit, but I do find a couple of mosasaurs and some other dinos, so I take them out, but they don't really have anything of interest that I need. I really need those tentacles because that's what I need in order to summon the boss. I already have plenty of Megalodon teeth, as well as some other components, but these I still need. Anyway, going into day 29, this is when I'm going to try again at the ice dungeon. I spent the last day and a half gathering up gear in order to replace the ones that I had lost. Now, you'll notice that most of my tools are put away. That's because if I die again, I don't want to have to re-farm a bunch of metal tools, and I don't really need them for this dungeon. I just need armor and a weapon. Now, I didn't get a sword like I had last time, but I did find a spear, and it is ascended, so it'll have to do for now. It does hit a little bit harder, but it's still slower. Now, as you see there, I was trying to experiment to see if this ghillie suit would hide me from the boss. It did not. The moment she woke up, I made a break for it and tried running to the end, only to then finally remember, yeah, I need to kill her in order to get to the room. There she is right there. Now, this time, I actually have armor on instead of it all being broken by the little worms, because I managed to make it around him this time. I go onto the offensive and I poke her ravenously. Now, this does take quite a while. I edited it shorter so it looks a lot, shorter than it is. But after poking her for several minutes and her only breaking a few of my armor pieces for some reason, I do finally manage to take her down. Again, all the points into attack, into melee, and an ascended spear, yeah, just as good as any old gun. I head into the egg room where you see the dying Giganotosaurus waiting to be eaten by the offspring of the queen, and there is the artifact. Luckily, like I said, this one will spawn because the dungeon ones are not bugged for whatever reason. I then find this cute little Easter egg. I have no idea what it's in reference to, but I thought it was funny. And when you collect the artifact and head back into the Ice Queen room, you will notice there are a ton of red loot crates. Gather them up for some good stuff and make your way out to the exit. Do you see now why I said that this part of my series is not going to contain day 30? Because so much happens in day 29 that day 30 will feel like a slump, and I didn't want to end on that. And this is not even the end, because I had completely forgotten the exit to the ice cave leads you out into the canyon. At this point, I'm like, oh shit, I don't have my griffin and I don't have any way to get back home quickly. So I take the plunge into the river to see a baryonyx. Luckily, he was not really that big of a threat, but this means I'm gonna have to walk all the way home and pretty much be on survival mode with what little I have, because I have no tools. I have barely any food left. I have no canteen. Of course, you could just drink the salt water, so that's not that big of a deal. I have my trusty spear and half of my armor left that's still not broken. While trying to traverse, I do kill a couple of raptors and I tame a baby. In hindsight, this was not a good idea because now I'm having to wait around for this baby, and swimming for some reason is bugged for dinosaurs. So when you're swimming, they just kind of veer off and just kind of like glitch into the wall a little bit. Eventually, I get him unstuck and he starts to follow me one more time. But I also find it kind of funny. This baby was just born its mother killed before its eyes, taken as a slave basically, and is forced to basically go through its entire juvenile and adolescent years or hours or minutes really, swimming for its life through a giant canyon. This is basically a trial by water for this raptor, and it's kind of amazing. I want to kind of make a roleplay out of this. So I named him initially Red because of the red feathers that he's got on his crest. Eventually I named him Shark as a rite of passage because, again, he goes all the way into adulthood, just swimming after me, following me through this giant canyon while trying to make my way back home. Now, at some point in time, I did have to log off, go to work, and come back home and continue playing this because this is like 30 minutes into the walk at this point, and it was getting a bit tedious, so I had to take a break before coming back and continuing my trek, because I am still in the canyon. I have not reached the ocean yet. Eventually, I do find some land to walk across, so I don't have to swim the entirety of the time, which definitely helps with the stamina, because if you swim too long, you'll lose stamina and basically start to sink and drown. So having a little bit of land to go faster and to rest definitely helped a lot, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That little archway, that bridge there, kind of signifies that I am getting closer to the end of the canyon, and I will soon reach the ocean. Then I will just basically have to follow the path along the beach until I reach the blue obelisk, and then I can make my way back home to the Viking Bay from there. Finally, I reach the ocean and I get to the beach. This is the point where I named the raptor Shark instead of Red. That was the rite of passage name for it. Now he's an adult born by salt and ocean, so we're going to continue our path back home. I know exactly where I am now because on my roleplay server, this used to be where my house used to be, just off the coast there in that little island. So these woods, these shores, I know by heart, and I can get my way back home. Now, I just said I know by heart. I had forgotten this part of the woods are teeming with Therazinos. They're everywhere. I saw one there and I veered away thinking, oh, okay, it'll be fine. I go ahead and I jump off this little cliff right here, only to then see a Therazino rush at me out of nowhere. And then I noticed Shark was trying to fight him off. I quickly grab out my bow, trying to go in to defend Shark, only to see the dreaded red text that my Shark Raptor had been killed by the Therazino. Oh no, I quickly hightail it out of there and I raced back home. Yeah, so this was a little bit disheartening. My brand new ally, somebody who was born from salt and ocean, he is dead before we even make it back home. His journey ended way too soon. So, just like Floof Jr., Floof II, whatever you want to call him, I go ahead and I put a memorial, a tombstone next to Floof's for Shark. But before that, I hop onto my dragon and I go back to the ice cave in order to recover my griffin. I bring him home and I park him back on top of the stable where he should be. And that's going to be the end of this part. The next part in the series is going to be days 30 through 39. If you enjoyed this primitive playthrough of Ark Survival Ascended, the Ragnarok map, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Florida Gatorman out.